Hi, everyone. What I want to do here is to walk you through paper number one. And I, of course, mentioned this in my earlier video, but I did it in the context of all three papers. So, what I would like to do now is focus on just major paper number one, which is what we call the innovation assignment. So, I'll just take 3 or 4 minutes to do this, and that should help you. As is the case with all our assignments, this is a role playing assignment. That is to say, it's not an assignment that requires in depth research. The context is that we'll just say, hypothetically, on Thursday, you have an idea about how to improve something in your part of the workplace, in your unit or your subunit, and you take somewhere between 10 minutes and 2 hours, kind of depending on what it is, and depending on the nature of your work, and you write a memo to your supervisor. Now, the reason why this is a little bit strange and a little bit disquieting for many students who do this exercise, and obviously, as I have been saying, it's very easy for students to take a quick look at the assignment and write what they're used to writing. And that doesn't work here because this is not a traditional college term paper. Okay, it's a real world paper that is supposed to replicate the conditions that you would encounter at work. That's what this class is that we're teaching. We're teaching you the basic process for writing at work. We're not teaching you how to write a conventional college research paper. And so, one thing that's very important to keep in mind here is that you're writing to your supervisor as something like a middle level employee. And you can understand that however you want. It can be a middle level employee at the local Starbucks, or it can be a middle level employee as a GS 8 for the federal government, or GS 9 or 10 even at the federal government, or I don't know, a staff sergeant, we'll say, for the military. But the whole idea here is your frame of reference is pretty limited. That is to say, you're writing about real stuff at work, and this is in a way, this is the hard part because you have to imagine this, and you have to come up with the specifics. Excuse me, the specifics of your workplace, and you just use your imagination, quite frankly. If you need to do a little bit of research, that's fine. And you also have a sort of option here. You can either, you can use your actual job, that's absolutely okay, or you can invent one, or you can combine. You can also use a job you once had. Now, let me emphasize a couple of things. First of all, as I'm saying, the proposal, the suggestion, is limited in scope, as I said in the general talk. It's not for the world. It's not for the United States. It's not for New York. It's probably not for New York City, but it's where you work. The 10 or so people that you work with. That you work with. Another thing to keep in mind here is this is going to be very practical and specific. You're going to need actual dates, you're going to need times, you're going to need people, you're probably going to have to fictionalize the people, and I will write you in a day or two about the concept of fictionalization because it comes up pretty often. Now, so it's a role playing exercise. It's limited to your unit or workplace, the people that you see on a daily basis. You've got some choices regarding your supervisor. It could be that your supervisor is essentially a friend. It could be It could be that your supervisor is someone that you're not so very close to, or that you're in a hostile relationship. And that's completely up to you. But this should be reflected in the paper. And this is one of the skills that we want to develop, not like writing neutral stuff, which is the way you kind of do when you write a history paper or a psych paper. You're writing to a real person with interests and needs, and someone who has an attitude towards you. So friendly is fine, not so friendly is fine, calm and professional are equally good. Now, let me see. There's a couple of more things. Yes, and so the format for this is pretty straightforward. First of all, it's just a few pages long, and it's basically going to be bookended with an introduction and a conclusion. This is kind of similar to academic writing. Actually, it's very important that your supervisor knows why you're writing. The one thing to keep in mind, and one of the things I want to teach you in the course of the semester, is you're going to, in all cases, basically assume that your supervisor or whoever you're writing for is reading this fast. They're not like, you know, taking it home with them and outlining it and phoning people to reflect on the inner meaning of what it is you're writing, this sort of secret agendas. They're not doing that at all. They're reading it in literally 10 or 15 or 20 seconds, and then they're coming to a quick decision about, whether they want to move forward or not. Okay, so the way this works out, the middle of the paper is pretty much um, um, stable in the sense that you're going to have to, in the first part of the middle of the paper, explain what it is you're suggesting, and you need to be very clear here. If the reader slash supervisor does not know what it is you're suggesting, they're not going to read it, and they're going to get irritated because you're wasting their time. And once again, that needs to be very specific when it is supposed to start, where it is supposed to start, and once again, you're going to probably have to fictionalize a little bit to make this clear. One thing you do not have to do is like say, well, our company is organized too. Your supervisor knows more than you ever will about the background of the company. You don't have to do historical background. You don't have to define terms. That just frankly, would irritate your supervisor. Okay, because you're writing to someone who's in a hurry. You're writing to someone who knows everything about the company and can't reveal, in most cases, to you everything that she knows. Okay, so that's the first part of the body of the paper. The second part of the body of the paper is how it's going to benefit your unit, and that's all. That's all. Frankly, that's always going to be the same. It's going to be. I think this will have three positive effects. Positive effect one, positive effect two, positive effect three. Don't worry about being too simple. Don't worry about being too obvious. Now, there's one more thing I want to say before I sign off, and that is, as you're writing this, and this is one of the great differences between academic and professional writing. In academic writing, you basically, in most cases, have one shot. You're writing, you get a grade, and that's it. Okay, it's exactly the opposite, and this is one of the things I want to teach you how to do, and it's an extremely important skill. In professional writing, you almost never have one shot. You usually have quite a few. And what do I mean by that? In this case, when you're writing this proposal, you don't necessarily have to do a deep dive. You don't have to be subtle. You just want to establish the basics, okay? And then you have to assume that the supervisor slash reader will have questions that are probably pretty difficult for you to anticipate. Why? Because you don't know the business. You don't know the way your organization works. You don't know what your supervisors think. So when you write this kind of document, what I'm trying to say is that you write it with the anticipation of there being a follow-up. And the follow-up can be many different things. It could be a series of questions. It could be a request to redo the whole thing in light of something. Or or it can be a go ahead to begin developing it. Okay, and so you can't possibly know that, and so you have to set the document up. So it's very clear, very straightforward. So you get a yay, a nay, or questions, and the how the key thing here too is to be to make a case, because that's what this is. This is an argumentative paper. However, you don't want to make it sound as though you're going to be angry if it's refused. Not at all. You know, it's very calm. It's a friendly type paper. You're making a suggestion to improve things, and you know sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. I would say in general, okay, and obviously there's many different factors and cases and types of organizations, that this kind of memo is accepted about 40% of the time. And here, there's one more thing. Like in an academic paper, you know, you get kind of nervous if you get a B minus, a C plus, or lower. If your supervisor says no, you know, you just try again in 2 months. Okay, so there's this. It's not as though your grade is riding on this, and there's another thing going on in this kind of professional correspondence is sometimes they say no first, and then they come back to you in 2 months. So you don't want to assume the no was definitive. And often what goes on, and this happens, I would say at least 50% of the time, the supervisor says no, but it's not because the suggestion is not valid, it's because she does not have time to deal with it. So she'll say, no, we can't implement this right away. So in 10 days later, you know, she'll knock on your cubicle and she'll say, you know, I want to talk to you about something. And she'll say, you know, I really liked your proposal. We need to change it a little bit, but why don't you resubmit it? And this happens like constantly. So you want to be very relaxed and very high roadish when you do things like this. Okay, so the idea is you've got to decide about the tone and whether it's familiar or not so familiar. You want to make sure it's very, very specific. Name New York stuff. Okay, that's the easiest way to do this. Make sure that there's plenty of dates in there. A supervisor cannot process anything, cannot evaluate anything if the dates aren't there. Also, at the top, this is something that is easy to forget. At the top, make sure your contact information is very complete. Okay, even you might have to fictionalize this if you know, whatever, you know, you might have to fictionalize an address, but you always want to be very careful about that. And I'll get back to you, you know, soon, and I'll tell you exactly why I'm saying this. So I hope that helps. We have a completely optional Zoom meeting in 40 minutes, and let me just sort of say that the Zoom meetings are completely optional. You know, you don't have to come to any of them, quite frankly. And if you want more assistance, I'm just completely happy. We can, you know, Zoom as often as you want. That's, you know, that's a good thing. Okay, take care, everyone.